Good morning, everyone. It is Tuesday, and so we are listening with your eyes live. We were having some technical difficulties with my StreamYard, which is why you didn't see us right away at 7:30, but apparently the bug is fixed, or somehow we got the cameras working on both sides. So I am thrilled to introduce you today to my special guest, Dr. Daniel Wolfe. He is a jury consultant and works a lot in trial consulting, and he's the senior director of jury consulting at Magna Legal Services. And they're based here in Chicago. I think he and I met a couple years ago. We were somehow introduced when I was working with more attorneys, and I was fascinated with the idea of juries and their body language signals and how attorneys kind of read their juries and things. And I was able to sit in on one of Dan's mock trials, and it was fascinating, let me tell you. If I had it to do all over again, I think I would go back to school for whatever you need to go into for this kind of work, because it was it was truly interesting to see how the attorneys work and things. So we're going to be talking a lot about rapport, because that is the key thing that most successful attorneys need to establish right away with their jurors and their witnesses and everybody that's there at trials. And of course, we know that there's a lot of litigation and things that doesn't go to trial. But without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and put Dan on here with us. And so welcome so much to the, I guess, show, if you want to call it that. I encourage everyone to comment today if you're out there. We are on a little bit earlier today because I have another training. So hopefully the technical difficulties don't follow me into my virtual training that's coming up here this morning. But, and I should put it back on chat so that I can, or comments to see who comments. So I really wanted to talk about this idea of rapport building, because you've seen so many attorneys. You really have an inside look that none of us have a chance to see unless we, I don't know, I guess go to court all the time and just sit in the audience, or if we've been on a bunch of juries for some reason. But I really think attorneys, there's kind of a difference between the really successful ones and the not so successful ones, because of that idea of being able to connect with that jury pretty quickly. So is there one behavioral thing that you think like the successful folks do differently than what you would consider to be less successful? What do they do behaviorally that we can all learn from?
Sure. I think the biggest thing is their ability to read an audience well, because the ones that think they are great on stage really fall short of being able to read the audience well. So one of the things that I really often encourage them to do to build rapport when they only have a very short period of time, first is give someone a compliment, because people like to say, here's something good about themselves. So if you can, saying, hey, I love your hat, or what, just something. And then the second thing is part of that is smile. And, the old adage, if you smile, the world smiles with you, right? And then the third thing is find opportunities for what is known as reciprocal self-disclosure. Because particularly like when jury selection, and we're asking people to reveal private personal information about themselves, people are obviously reluctant to do that. But if someone demonstrates that for them, the lawyer, by revealing something, self-disclosure, and reciprocates that, it helps build rapport much more quickly and trust, so that they kind of let their guard down. So those are three things that I think that the attorneys who have been very effective in building that rapport immediately are able to read the audience well and observe those three things and practice them well.
Do you get a chance to share those tips with them, or do they take classes, quote unquote, in this kind of thing, or not?
Yeah, some of the best lawyers that I've seen perform, and it is a performance, that are just stellar. And I always, people say, if you had to pick your top 5 lawyers that really connected well. I can immediately think of who they are. And the top 2, if not 3, of all, if not taken, actually now give classes in improv because
Right.
their ability to improvise and read an audience, because that's, good, improv skills requires reading the audience, right? And reciprocating. So I encourage them, and I still to this day, people who, ask me, what can I do to be better? I said, sign up with the improv for, a class or 2. And it's amazing the skill sets that you can hone to be able, not so much to be comedic. I mean, some of these folks are good at humor, because they can make people laugh. And that's another good way to build rapport. But it's more of just being able to be good on their feet, think well, think quickly, connect with people, somewhat ingratiate, but not, overly ingratiate people, right? You have to find a nice balance so people don't feel like they're feeling they're being played to.
Right.
So,
and there's that authenticity piece, right? When they have to, one of the things that I was always telling them is you have to make sure that you look the same, quote unquote, or that your behavior is enough the same when you're back at the desk or, or the table talking to the rest of your team as you do when you're up in front of them, because that's one of the things that I've seen in the courtrooms that I've been in is it feels like, they turn on or somehow it's like showtime when they're in front of the jury. And I was like, I don't know, you're losing your audience a little bit because they're not sure who to believe. Like, okay, so, or are you being lied to because it seems like a dog and pony show a bit in front of them versus a little more Law and Order, or Bull or those TV shows. It looks a little more like that than maybe the normal. So do you have a story of like to share of body language gone bad? I mean, I think these are, or somebody that did something that you're just like, oh, that was an epic fail, and you kind of got what they were trying to do. But
I do. I have a couple of them. Real quick, I'm going to tell a positive story of someone that used it well and developed rapport. And it was in a smaller jurisdiction. It was a rural jurisdiction. So, it was a business case, pretty big case for this jurisdiction. And so they had the jurors come in, and we were on the defense. The plaintiff's lawyer gets up, and the first thing he does is try to find a way to connect with the jurors. And he starts telling this story about how he left the house that morning. And as he's running out the door, he hears his young daughter, who's like 9 years old, say, Daddy, before you go, I have something for you. And he says, I'm trying to get out the door. I have to go quick. I have a trial. And so he's trying to be nice to his daughter. And he turns around and she's standing. She goes, I made something for you. And she reaches out and hands him a friendship bracelet that she had made. And he's telling the story. And of course, now, first of all, as he's telling the story, you can see the jurors kind of warming up, thinking, oh, this guy's a father. He's taking time for his daughter. And then he goes, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, he goes, I know we're asking you questions here, and you're probably nervous, just like I was nervous dealing with my daughter because she said, Dad, I want you to wear this. And he's thinking, I can't wear this to court. And then as he's telling this, he raises his hand up and pulls his sleeve back on his suit jacket, and here's this friendship bracelet. And you can just see the jurors melting, right? One thing, I turned to counsel and I said, what a shtick. He's probably used this a million times.
That's what was going through my mind. Of course, the cynic in me is like, use that every time from there on out.
Yeah, and these people are eating it up, and they're just like gushing with information. So I'm like, oh. So I'm like,
on his LinkedIn profile, it has a congratulations, my daughter, graduated from, magna cum laude from.
That's right.
Right? So she's really
always bring a friendship bracelet. If you see that, you're thinking, all right, this is a shtick I've seen before. One of the disasters I've seen is I had a client years ago who was a fine Southern gentleman, and one of his nonverbal behaviors was to wink at people. Yes. And you find people that way that, right, just, they smile, they just kind of do one of those things, and he did that just not even thinking, right? And there was a trial where he just found himself winking. And unfortunately, there was a particular juror, female, who afterwards was very upset because she felt like he was like flirting with her because he kept winking, and he was winking at everybody, but of course she thought it was all towards her. And it was one of those things that just nonverbal body language piece that he just was not even really aware that he was doing, and the impact it might have on that. Another one, I remember a client who he had a bad back and he was having back spasms. So he found himself slouching in his chair like this because his back was just killing him, and he couldn't, and he was just kept pushing back. And we talked to the jurors afterwards, and several of them commented they thought he was being totally disrespectful because he kept leaning back in his chair. He just didn't care like this. And he was doing it to, his back was killing him. And he just wasn't thinking about that body language message that he was sending of disinterest and disrespect, frankly, for some people. Mm-hmm. And the other one I had, and this one was about 2 years ago, where the client was an older male, very seasoned trial attorney, knew opposing counsel very well, but was a younger female attorney. But they knew each other personally and socially. And during the course of the trial, he several times would go up to her to talk to her, but he would put his hand on her shoulder. Just because that was his style, because he knew her very well. Well, the jurors didn't know that, right? And they just went ballistic. They thought, he was patronizing and being sexist and all kinds of bad things, right? And things that he just didn't even think about, right? Just a gesture that he thought was just normal for him without thinking the stage upon which he was doing it. So those are 2 or 3 instances where I've seen body language just be totally misinterpreted, not to the fault of the jurors, but just that's because of their context of where they found themselves.
Right. So moral of the story for everybody out there is you really never know how what you're doing is being perceived. So I'm always telling people, find a buddy kind of in your office, somebody that you trust that can point those things out to you. So for instance, the lawyer that was putting the hand on the shoulder of the female counsel, it would have been nice if somebody else on his team, or if there was somebody else at the table to say, I noticed the jury kind of recoiling when you did that. You got to watch it. You can't touch her. In today's day and age, men touching women anywhere is just not okay. Right. So you just never know. And, the guy that was leaning back, if he had just thought, right, or if somebody had said, once again, the jury's looking like they're less warm to you now. I don't know what's happened, but if he had just, at some point said to them, shared that his back was killing him, even something like, man, these chairs, guys, I hope your back's not killing you like mine is, or something, right? Mm-hmm. It would be really helpful for them to just verbalize what is that's happening, or what is that they see. And that's even one of the things that I'm going to be talking about in my training that's coming up, because they're working on their meetings and making their meetings better. And one of the things is really you need to observe what's happening, just as you said, that whoever can observe the jury better and figure out what's going on with them. But, I'm going to be working on them with actually calling out what it is that they're seeing, like in the observation piece. So, Dan, I notice you look like you're in agreement right now, but are you really agreeing with me, or are you encouraging me to keep talking? So that they're getting used to, and I said, and everybody needs to do it, because if only one person really keeps calling everybody out, then it's like, your second grade teacher, calling you out on something. But if we get into the habit of doing that, particularly on Zoom calls, because you don't know what perhaps they're actually grinning at, or right, it could be something totally different, but somebody's taking offense, somebody's laughing, and that could easily happen, I suppose, in the courtroom.
Absolutely.
As well, right? The lawyer starts to chuckle at something, and it's more of a, somebody sent him a funny text, but he's laughing at the table during something that's shouldn't be laughing at, right? And then the jury's like, why is that guy laughing? Or, those sorts of things. So On the other side, then, if it's so important for us to be reading others, and that's the observation piece, my whole platform, listening with your eyes, right? Like we
Mhm.
have to observe more, everybody. We have to be better at this. Is there something that you think attorneys tend to miss or misinterpret that jurors do a lot, that either they think it's a positive and it's really not, or you know, or the opposite? Maybe it's something that they're thinking is negative, but maybe it's not so bad. Is there, you know, you've seen so many
Mhm.
jurors, real and mock,
Right.
in your career. So is there anything that, you know, that you think is missed that we should be being aware of?
Yeah, poetically, it's exactly what you just pointed out in your example about me nodding my head. That so often jurors are nodding their head, and lawyers look at that and go, "Oh, they're in agreement with me, right?" They might even be smiling, right? And all the while they're driving the stake in their client's heart, right? And so I think that's one of the things that lawyers so often misinterpret, because it's just, as you know, a form of just acknowledging that you're listening, right? Doesn't mean you're in agreement.
Oh,
But we so often
absolutely.
think it is.
And particularly for everybody out there, if you haven't read this yet. And hi, Marie. I put your comment up there. I don't know whether it shows to everybody or not. I think it does across
I see it.
platforms. Maybe
Yeah.
not. But Marie was saying great lessons, and I agree. This is going to be one of the most rewatched, I think, lives out there that I've done. But going back to the nodding thing, one place where people can get in trouble is women tend to nod as a courtesy, as a I'm with you, I'm listening, keep talking, particularly, you know, if they cock their head to one side, you know, it shows it's that I'm showing you I'm listening because I've been taught that's what I'm supposed to do, right? And for men, often they nod a little bit more for agreement than they do to keep talking. And so you can get caught with somebody thinking that you agreed to something that you actually didn't think that you agreed to at all. And somebody can come back, you know, at the next meeting, you know, and say, okay, Dan, so you didn't send me your report on XYZ? And you're like, what report? Oh, well, last week you agreed you were going to send this report. And you're like, no, I didn't. Because of this miscommunication that just happened from the body language. So I think, you know, all of these things are great. So in our last 5 minutes or so, the last thing that I really thought would be helpful for our audience today is this idea of feedback, because you in your job have to give feedback all the time, whether it's good or bad, to, you know, a lot of young attorneys. I'm assuming too, because at least in the mock trial that I saw, like they had like the B team of attorneys give the statements during the mock trial because they needed to do both sides. So
Yep.
the more seasoned attorney was the opposing side, and their younger attorney was basically giving their case. And so just help for all of those managers out there, or new managers that are like, now I have a team, now I have to do performance reviews. Oh my gosh, I hate giving feedback. Is there a way to give feedback that you found is more helpful than others?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think first and foremost, I always have to remind myself to take the perspective of where they're coming from. And we so often make assumptions about their motivations and what their interest level is. And I find often with, you know, lawyers and ones that, you know, think they know everything, very seasoned, right? They're like, oh, you know, what are you going to tell me, right? So I always have to remind myself to be humble. But I have to have the attitude that I'm sometimes wrong, but I'm never in doubt, right? Because they rely upon you to be the expert, just like someone who's relying on you to be the boss, the leader, that they want to see that you lead well by example, but that you're humble enough to acknowledge that you can listen to them and take their input. So again, it's that I try to share with clients that adage that they won't care what you think unless they think you care. And so you always have to have that sense of, being humble, but caring. And so as you give feedback, one, I try to find something that at least one thing they didn't know already, right? Just a hook somewhere that they're going to go, wow, okay, I learned something today, right? And if you can teach rather than preach, you're going to, again, build that rapport connection, but they're more likely then to listen to you. And it's all about impression management and compliments. You know, many of the lawyers I work with are narcissistic, surprise, right? So they like to have their ego stroked, right? So you got to be genuine, but find a way to compliment them, right? And also to remind them, look, I'm here to compliment what you already do that you're great at and to make you better, right? Is to not supplant what you do, but to complement what you're doing. And so I'm always trying to find a way to do that. And as a classic example, and this happened a few years ago, where one of my colleagues, a graphic consultant colleague, was off in a client meeting, and he comes running back to the office and he goes, Dan, you got to meet with this client I just met with. This really complicated medical negligence case. And I was talking about some graphic ideas. But this would be a great case for you to mock try. And I said, sure, I'd be happy to call him. He goes, but I have to tell you, he told me that he's had horrible experiences with jury consultants, and he frankly just dismisses them because he doesn't find them adding any value. But he was willing to take a few minutes because I encouraged him to talk to you. And I said, well, that's great. So I pick him up, the phone, call him right away. He's in his office. He answers his phone. And I'm thinking, all right, at least he's given me 2 minutes to say hello. I might be able to share something. And so he immediately launches into telling me about the case. And I'm like, okay, this is weird. He told me that, he hates jury consultants. Why is he giving me the time? So he goes on for about 5 minutes and he stops and he goes, Dan, I don't know if Scott, who is my colleague, told you, but I really don't like jury consultants. I've had really bad experiences. And I was just, it's kind of just ingratiate Scott. I told him that I would, talk to you just to be friendly. And he goes, you may consider that to be a problem. And I said, no, I never see problems, just opportunities. And it's the only time I ever got to use that expression, right? He burst up laughing and he goes, I like you. I'm going to hire you. And I ended up working with him, and I've worked with him ever since. So it was that's the only time I was able to say to somebody, I don't have problems, just opportunities. And that somehow connected with him, thinking, okay, this guy gets it. He's not going to try to bowl me over. He's not going to supplant what I'm doing. He's here to help me be successful, and I get it. So again, I think that just to bring that back to full circle is we have to remind ourselves to be humble. Those people that we try to influence, they have to know that we care, because otherwise, again, they aren't going to care what we think unless they feel that, right? And just find something that you can connect with them to teach them about themselves that they didn't already know, give them some insight, and that will help build that trust and rapport that you need for them to listen.
Yeah, this has been wonderful. I want everybody to know how to, connect with Dan on LinkedIn. You can obviously find him at Magna Legal Services if you find yourself in need of mock trial services. Hopefully not, but Dan obviously is a wealth of knowledge because of the vast experience he has in meeting so many people all the time. I mean, those are the best connectors and usually the best communicators. And I can tell you from watching him in action with that mock trial, from meeting the folks right as they come in, he's talking to the mock jurors and asking them the questions and getting their information, and really has a gift for putting everybody at ease. So I think you've seen a little bit of that today. So take a lesson from Dan and notice that he's smiling. He was very genuine. Remember, I always talk about upper body movement. Well, he's not stiff, and that's really one of the secrets to his success. If I can get everybody to do more of that, I will have left this earth a better place than I found it. So next week, everybody, we are talking taxes, actually, with with a tax attorney, and we're talking a lot about connections next week because Lisa's a fantastic connector. So I hope we'll see you normal. I think we're back to our normal 8:30 versus this kind of weird hybrid, a little bit early time slot. Tomorrow, don't forget, I am hosting, where is that? I don't know where that, oh, there it is. I am hosting my Tales Your Body Tells at noon. If you want, that's a meeting that I do for my community once a month, the last Wednesday of the month. So if you want invited to that, we're going to be talking some fun body language things. One of the people that we're going to be looking at is the Tonight Show interview with the My Pillow guy that was on a little while ago. He's a very interesting body language. So we're going to take a look at that because it's fun to look at his body language. And we'll be doing some other tips. So every month we kind of have some fun. So if you want invited to that, let me know. Otherwise, we'll see you next week. Thanks again to Dan for bringing all of this wisdom to the talk today. And we'll see you next week. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, Allison.